Yesterday, a hostile reality bender attacked Bifrost. An initiative President Niang turned into Alan Rickman for half an hour. Her account coincides with the time and content of SCP-4587 A-528. I am aware that death is impossible in Corbinate, but there were casualties. Permanent psychological trauma, trillions of Corbinese lunari and property damage, and what the initiative affectionately refers to as no-mouth must screamers. I really hate when that happens, by the way. I mean, geez, these days it's 2-3 times a week. Maybe a little more during the holidays, like July 4th, you know what I mean? Welcome to the show, man. SCP Cafe Recap. This is 2019, week 27. Happy 4th of July, everyone. I'm actually recording this a day early, recording it on the 4th. We'll be including the mailbag and all that usual stuff that is a Friday-only sort of convention. But I wanted to get the show in before people started setting off fireworks, because once they start, it goes on and on and on and on. So, yeah, I've got the day off, so let's do this shit a day early and get it while the audio quality is as good as it's going to be all weekend, and probably for a little while. There's no guarantees that they will have run out of fireworks by the week 28 show. So, we'll see. By the time you're hearing this, the collaboration contest is officially closed to entries. We are now in the voting period, and that's going to go on for about another 11 days, so through the week 28 show, and things will be done and settled between week 28 and week 29. So you have until the 15th. Read through the entries. There are 21 different teams that are still active in the competition. There were a few that their works did not survive and were deleted per usual deletion guidelines. A few of them only got one article out of the two complete. There was some really, really good stuff that's come out of this contest. What I'm going to be doing once it is finished, and probably I'm going to wait until the voting period's over, is I'm going to do a special recap of CollabCon, and it will probably be a 2-part show. The first part will be going into everything outside of the top 5, so the 16 other teams, their 2 entries. We'll be doing sort of a synopsis of each one, give each one, maybe 3 or 4 minutes, and the part 2 will go into the top 5 entries by vote count, and I have a clue as to a couple of them that are going to be in there already, and rightfully so. How some people manage to get the amount of work, like just the sheer technical quality that's come out of this contest is amazing. The technical ability really stood out to me in a couple of different places. So this was a great success of a contest, I already think, and we'll be talking about each entry on a separate show. That show will go up 1 week early for patrons, and speaking of early access, patrons are already listening to a deep dive episode of SCP-4406 and UIU File 2017-102. This is mine and AIS Mallard's entry into the collaboration contest, and it's actually a video format. It is sort of a screencast of the work, so you can see what I'm talking about as I discuss it. I don't think this will work normally for recap shows, but in the event of talking about my own works, I was able to make it work, I think. So the deep dive is about 54 minutes long, if I remember right, and talk about both pieces and what we were trying to convey in different areas, and all the little subtleties and backstory to sort of tie the works together. If you don't have that sort of patience, in the UIU file, in the comments, I've left more or less full spoilers for the work. So, depending on how much free time and what your preferred method of consumption is, there is, I think a little more going on in the works than people will immediately pick up on. It did sort of suffer from chronic subtlety, and I'm not sure we totally got that worked out by the end. And the vote counts kind of reflect that, I think, because I think it was a stronger work than the votes necessarily reflect. But I think you should always, feel that way about your own works if you don't have confidence in it. I think that sort of comes through in the writing. So yeah, that's already out for patrons, and it will be available on scp.cafe and all the usual suspects as an audio file next Tuesday. If you want to get the most out of it, I suggest checking out the YouTube channel. That is linked from scp.cafe, and you can see the screencast to go along with it. Now, with the collaboration contest being what it was, a lot of the works that got posted this past week were for that contest, and it's only been in the last couple of days that there's been much of anything posted outside of the purposes of the contest because, well, the submission period is now over. So we had 23 skips surviving up to selection day, but only 10 of them were in scope. 11 of them were collaboration contest entries, and 2 of them were in the negatives. So out of the 10, and normally I have about a 30% selection rate. Like if I'll normally pick 5 out of about 15. In this case, my selection rate was double that. Out of 10 in scope, I'm going to talk about 6 of them on this show. A number of them were fairly short, so I think it's still going to be a reasonable length of time to get the show out there and over with. And there's just good stuff. I always appreciate that when people still want to post, while these contests are going on, because otherwise I had a funny feeling like I was going to only end up with 3 or 4 works to choose from, and then I'd probably had to do something entirely different with the Week 27 show. So we're going to get started. SCP-4838, titled Lover's Quarrel by AIS Mallard. So we have a wide image of a row of houses. The caption indicates that Candace Harker's house is the second from the left. These are all sort of traditional Western European, I think English houses in a row with a little hedge in the front. And the caption also says the location of the first known SCP-4838 event. This has an object class of neutralized, and it is only level 1 classified. Since it is neutralized, the special containment procedures are 4 words. No containment is necessary. The description indicates that the skip refers to a series of paranormal incidents which affected Candace Harker, a 27-year-old woman from Gloucester, England, beginning on February 19th, 2017. A collection of artifacts manifested about her person, starting in her home. They were all signed by a Robert Green, and apparently a man of that name was romantically involved with her briefly prior to his disappearing November 2016, so about 3 months prior. These instances are believed to be singularly cognitohazardous. Despite their innocuous or even heartwarming content, Candace developed paranoia and identified the sender as having hostile intent. We have tried countermimetic therapy. That has not been terribly effective. The symptoms resume within 1 to 3 hours. And that's pretty much it for the main meat of the article. That's all done in the past tense. That sort of meshes with it being neutralized, so we expect in these addenda that we explain how we came to the resolution of it. So the first addendum is a timeline of 4838 events, and it explains how we discovered this anomaly. A Foundation bot noted Harker's repeated attempts to contact the local police, and 2 field agents were dispatched to her residence. They noted the police had summarily ignored her complaints of harassment, and she gave them 4 different items. They were typed letters or handwritten notes, all placed in her mailbox, and over the course of 3 days. And they're all innocuous enough. I've missed you. I hope you haven't forgotten me. It's been about a year. Are you well? I saw a pheasant outside my window today. It reminded me of how peaceful things can be. You like pheasants too, right? Oh, right, how could I forget? You prefer mallards. They're sweet birds as well, like you. I see you, AIS Mallard. I often admire pictures of you. To me, you are the most beautiful woman in the world. So that's a bit less encouraging, that last one. And so that was apparently the one that, sort of broke the camel's back, and she tried to call the cops, and they ignored her for whatever reason. So we try to set up a camera in the inside of the mailbox to witness the next event, and instead it is placed under the doormat, and it says, "I know this is a hard time for us, but I truly do love you. We're strong. We'll make it through this." And that's interesting because it is kind of telling that they were somehow aware of the camera being placed. They were watching or somehow knowledgeable. And then the Foundation sets up a series of cameras within the house to better determine the origin of these instances. And a handwritten letter was placed just outside of the line of sight of a camera. It says, "You can't run away from the truth. I'm here for you. I want to protect you during these hard times." And then the next day, another note attached to the ceiling. And it says, "I'm glad we're as close as we are. I appreciate that you open up to me like this." So at this point, we're kind of at a loss. We approve humanoid containment of Miss Harker. We take her into Site 70. And then the next day, a package is sent to Site 70. And this is a typewriter, a letter on parchment written by a typewriter. It says, "I just wanted to say you look very beautiful today." So she is somehow still being seen despite being in the Foundation site, and a bouquet of flowers was also present. So that's good and creepy. The next day, another letter, typewriter on parchment. This was on Candace's chest when she awoke. The letter was just placed there. It says, "I love you dearly. Never forget that." So we're slowly but surely raising the stakes with this. So we have basically at this point decided to maintain her containment and, until we can neutralize her, handle the anomaly in some way. During psychological evaluations, she repeatedly expressed terror. I can't imagine why. And she refused to consume prescribed mood-improving medicine. The notes continue. Every day there's something. A dried mess of ink on parchment discovered during lunch in the Site 70 mess hall. And it says, "Sharing a meal with you always brightens up my day." The next day, the medium was motor oil found on the bed. And it says, "It's been so long since we've been together. I miss you, sweetie." The next day, a note written in blueberry juice on the bathroom wall. "I hope you're doing well, my love. I cooked our favorite meal and enjoyed it. I wish you could have been here too." And we're not in any way explaining where this guy is or what the hell's going on. But these things persist. A note formed from stray hairs in the Site 70 break room sofa. It says, "Remember, I will always love you." Now, this is us, this isn't her, there's no gaslighting or anything going on. This is, our format that we are finding and sort of corroborating the story that these things are really occurring. We then keep her wholly confined in her cell until we can carry out a suitable counter-mimetic treatment. And that is an interesting choice of words. That would indicate we're more interested in returning her to a sense of normalcy than actually identifying the culprit, as it were. So we have a note made out of dirt and dust on the cell floor. "It's been a tough day. Seeing your smiling face fills me with sunlight and happiness." The next day, there is a note made from Candace Harker's menstrual blood. That's a great impact from this. On the bathroom mirror, it says, "You are the best thing to have happened to me." Whew. And we have one during Harker's morning meal, made from tar drippings on her standard rations. And it says, "Love you, honey. I'm coming home from work. We'll be together soon." We go to a second addendum, Incident 4838 final. The next day, surveillance systems within Site 70 experienced an outage. All security personnel became unconscious. Following breach recovery, it was discovered that Harker's chamber had been forced open. Harker herself was found lying against the wall, deceased. Signs of a struggle were present: torn clothing, scattered bloodstains, the presence of numerous lacerations on her corpse. Her entrails were arranged to spell, "I will always be there to protect you." Since the incident, no further 4838 events have occurred. End article. So this wasn't where I thought we were going with this. I thought we would have a big reveal. I thought we would do something. We didn't do any of that. This is a super grim little article, and I can respect that. But it is it's fucking disturbing. This is really good, really creepy. In that sort of happy sing-song, everything's all well and good, even when it really shouldn't be. There should be absolutely no reason for this to continue happening, yet it does. And this is it evokes a lot of feelings, like like the futility of our efforts here are really sort of made evident. We have no idea how this being, like, the whole fucking site went down. Security personnel got knocked out, and we don't actually specify how much time passed here. That might have been an interesting little inclusion, but this is really good. It is not. It's unapologetic in being a very grim, creepy story, and I appreciate that about works when they do so. We don't see a ton of those, and that is more of what we used to see, back Series 1 era. So I appreciate that about this piece. It does evoke some of those good creepy qualities of Series 1 in the best way. This was a very hearty +1. Moving on, SCP-4631, Never a Devil Again, by Nat Voltaic. Again, that is formerly 9volt. They've been one of the more ever-present authors on Cafe. We've covered a lot of her work over the past 6 months or so. This one has an image of a bus, and this isn't any sort of bus you would see at least anywhere I've been. It's one of these powered by wire deals, and the article, the caption says SCP-4631 in service. So our skip is apparently a bus. We're taking some liberties with the formatting, and I've soapboxed on this before. I don't care for either of these changes. Item number, instead of just the little pound sign, we're using an established symbol of NO. This is numero. Item numero. SCP for, it's just, I don't see the sense in bucking this particular convention, nor do I see the sense in changing object class Euclid to anomaly class Euclid. Is it, such that not all anomalies are objects? Yes. Nobody has really complained about that up to this point, and I don't see what this buys you. This, I think, can only really draw cheap downvotes, because some people are going to do that and be like, I don't see the sense in doing either of these things, so I'm going to downvote it. I'm not even going to read past these 2 lines. Now, this particular author is talented enough that I think it can be, pulled off despite it. If you're, a beginner, I certainly don't advise making changes to, fundamental concepts in this way. If you're more experienced, you tend to know the what you're getting into when you do something like this. Anyway, make what you will of that. The procedures are about average length, but it does note that 4631 can't be physically contained. Its anomalous properties are not outwardly visible either, so it is allowed to operate publicly. I kind of take umbrage with this on its face, because that is very much not what we do. So it does basically set out some stuff that it has to answer for right away. it does go on to say amnestics are to be administered in the event that any civilians notice anomalous phenomena, and the Site 201 Containment Oversight Team is in continued contact with the Toronto Transit Commission to ensure that other streetcars do not interrupt 4631's operation. Monitoring equipment has been installed into 4631. Once a month, a researcher is to interview -A. Cover stories regarding an anonymous philanthropist have been disseminated to explain the manifestation of money obtained by 4631. In the event that the anomaly develops hazardous behavior, Mobile Task Force Upsilon 20 Hogtown Garrison agents trained in applied demonology are to be deployed for recontainment purposes. Ritual invocations to contact the employers of 4631 are still under development. So we are setting expectations in these procedures. We're laying out a lot of different things that we have to go back and answer for later. The big one to me is why the thing can't be physically contained, and why we're allowing it to go about its business, because that is awfully close to the "it's allowed to roam the site freely" trope. And I know Nat Voltaic is a better author than that, so it is intriguing to me what they're trying to do and if it stands up to scrutiny. The skip is described as a Flexity Outlook streetcar operated by a Type 1 Tartarian entity. This is -A. We don't talk about Tartarus very often. One of the Greek planes below Hades, full of demons and wicked souls and the like. So we can assume Type 1 Tartarian entity is probably a demon or some sort of lord of Tartarus. This streetcar serves the Spadina streetcar line in Toronto. The vehicle's exterior and interior cabins are normal. Deviation from the standard Flexi streetcars exist, however, in its internal mechanisms, including structures composed of human bone tissue replacing internal machinery. However, they're not outwardly noticeable, as they're covered in thin layers of plastic and metal, as would normally be seen on these streetcars. There are alchemical symbols carved into the insides of various devices. There's a machine constructed from sulfur compounds, which continually pumps human blood through the vehicle to generate electricity. And we have a footnote here indicating that the skip does not require connection to an overhead wire to stay powered. And there's also a small wormhole that manifests in the fare vending machine, transporting 10% of deposited physical money to homeless persons and charity groups within city limits every 12 hours. So that would take quite a bit of explaining, and we do go back to that thing that we've got a cover story about an anonymous philanthropist, and we also note that -A is capable of changing their appearance. It typically assumes the appearance of a different Toronto streetcar operator each day. -A has been observed to change to non-human shapes at times when no passengers are on the streetcar. It's not visible from the outside. It is seen from the outside to vanish until regaining a human form. And a plaque with the following text is on the underside of the streetcar. It says, "Provided by the Toronto Demon Council, aiding the denizens of above with the best of below, established 1950. Toronto Demon Council is in blood red, because of course it is. So we go into a Addendum 1, the Discovery Log, where in 2010, Toronto police received multiple phone calls describing a streetcar emerging in a flash of red light. Upsilon 20 was sent and quickly contained the streetcar, storing the -A in a demonics-sealed chamber. We don't elaborate on what that means. After all witnessing subjects were amnestized, the vehicle was transported to Site 201, and 2 a.m. the next day, the streetcar and the driver were surrounded by a red mist and vanished. It was then observed ejecting out of Lake Ontario by a different MTF reaching a height of 570 meters before accelerating into the city. Personnel observed it operating as a normal streetcar the subsequent day. Current containment procedures were developed in response. So I kind of take umbrage with this for an origin story, that we tried to contain it one time, it broke free, and we say, oh well. I guess it exists and is in constant contact with the public now. I cannot really incorporate that on its own into how the foundation has collectively been written to operate. The whole secure, contain, protect thing, that's kind of our business. It's kind of what we do, and we're actually pretty good at it historically. So this I don't really care for this as an origin story. I think it needs more to really make sense and for people to buy in, because I can't buy into it as it's written right now. Dash A is presumed to have been first encountered 3 years prior in EE 5092. Now, EE is linked to the log of extranormal events, so this may have been inspired by an existing extranormal event piece. In 2007, bystanders at the St. George subway station reportedly saw a series of flashing lights at the end of a subway tunnel. A minute later, a train exited the tunnel at high velocity, derailing and crashing into the subway platform. First responders investigating the train interior discovered numerous dismembered cadavers with body malformations, machines resembling medieval torture devices, spatial anomalies, and train cars filled entirely with blood. Several minutes after the crash, multiple people witnessed a male subject staggering away from the train with a long sword piercing their chest. When medical personnel arrived, the subject was surrounded in a red mist, vanishing soon after. Refer to file EE 5092 for further info, and Dash A has refused to answer questions regarding this extra-normal event. So, taking the first two paragraphs of the discovery and the last three, I absolutely cannot buy this work. It is, this thing crashed into a subway platform. It was, full of dead bodies and all sorts of horrific things. And we are to believe that after one attempt at containing it, we gave up after it broke out. I really staunchly oppose how we are handling this particular work. Despite where we go from here in the piece, I can't buy in. I cannot suspend my disbelief to that extent, rather, given what we've got going on with it. So we have a second addendum. This is an incident that happened in 2011. A Type 1 Tartarian entity, this is Dash B, in the disguise of a civilian, boarded this streetcar. The researcher happened to be on the streetcar at this time for a routine interview. So Dash B approaches the cabin of the streetcar, converts their jaws into a set of muscular hydrostats, and that's a word I actually was not familiar with. Apparently this is the more scientifically accurate way to cover things like tongues or elephants' trunks, strong muscles that can move in sort of independently without a skeletal support, and are typically used to manipulate items or to move the host around. That's your 10-second Wikipedia break. So it converted its jaw into that, and then tore open the cabin entrance. And then it says, below is footage recorded by researcher Zulan's standard issue body camera, and we have a transcribed video log, and there are clouds of red mist obscuring the visuals. Dash A says, how did you find? And Dash B says, party crasher, in all caps. There are bone crunching sounds and squelching. It then says, I lost an eye from you. Marquise lost her face. We have a footnote for Marquise that could potentially reference the Marquise ranking of demon in the lesser key of Solomon. And B says, it was her best face, which I like as a line. Dash A starts to reply, but it's muffled over all the noises of pieces of the streetcar being caved in. And Dash A says, nothing compared to what you did to all of them. Dash B says, the Marquise hates hypocrites. So Dash A converts a hand into a beak. It bites off one of Dash B's arms. 6 wings sprout from their back, and they attempt to fly to the rear of the car, but are pulled back in. Dash A is thrown into the cabin walls, breaking through them. Dash B says, the Marquise knows the past always catches up. She knows. Dash A says, I know. I don't care. And submerges a limb into the streetcar controls. The streetcar accelerates and collides into the side of a building. Windows shatter. Dash B is launched through the front windshield. Dash A gets up, converts an arm into a scythe, and laterally bisects Dash B. At this point, a hole opens behind the researcher, who gets the hell out of Dodge. The streetcar continues dissolving, collapsing into a pool of blood. Over the course of a minute, the blood vaporizes, coalescing into red mist, shrinking in size until it vanishes. The remnants of Dash B lie on the pavement, no sign of Dash A is noted, and log. So for the next 4 months, the skip does not manifest. The only reported activity during this time was at the grave sites of persons who died during... Oh, and you know what? Again, we've got these these date formats that are ambiguous. It says from 5/4/2011 to 9/4/2011. It did not manifest. I took that to mean 4 months. No, it's 4 days. Because it says later the anomaly returned to service on 10/4/2011. So I'm assuming it went 4 days, and then on the 5th day it came back. Dash A was noted to be wearing bandages and an arm cast for the following 3 weeks, signed with messages of well-wishing from Tartarian entities of known Toronto Demon Council Association. Since then, monitoring devices placed inside 4631's fair vending machine have observed that instead of 10% of all deposited money being transported to homeless persons and charity groups, the figure has risen to 90%. End article. There's an interesting story in here. It is not as clear, I think, as it could be. You are left to piece a lot of it together yourself. I think I've said my piece fairly thoroughly on some major flaws that I feel this work has. The containment does not match with the danger that we've observed with this on 3 different occasions now. I cannot back this as a way that we would realistically handle this. So it is, I can't +1 it regardless of any other qualities. At best, this is a no vote because I am so not buying what we're doing here. That said, there's, we've got this interesting Toronto Demon Council. We've got some infighting where these two obviously know each other, and we have some commentary perhaps on, corporations that might be making sort of a weak gesture towards charitable donations, resulting in people involved, not really appreciating that and finding it to be insulting. So there's some interesting stuff going on, but the issues I have with it are too significant to +1. This is a no vote. Moving on, SCP-4338, titled Vulcan the Disaster, by T. Rutherford, who has been on an absolute tear, absolutely on fire, and this work is just another one. I think I've covered every one of their pieces up to this point in a cafe episode, all entirely on merit, because I do not know who writes these in advance. The rating is hidden when I make my selections, as is the author, until I go back later and be like, God, that was really good, and then I sort of punch it in the chat, and I get the title and the author as well as the rating. And speaking of ratings, this one is currently high skip of the week at +74 at the time of this recording. in, I think, 3 days, 2 days. Hang on, let me see here. Plus 74 since July 2nd. Today's the 4th. So 2 days and change, plus 74. That's absolutely on fire. And rightfully so. We have an image that's fairly wide. It looks like a volcanic eruption with a huge chunk coming off the top. It's totally spherical. And this caption reads, SCP-4338, image taken during event DN 4338-33-9/4/1974. So we have fairly detailed procedures here. They involve 6 FHT-class security frigates, along with the aquatic research vessel Heron, will maintain a 7-point blockade around Moaha Island. We have a footnote here giving coordinates where it is in the South Pacific. At the beginning of each lunar month, a varied assortment of food must be deposited into this island's volcanic crater, including, and we have a set of bullet points here, and they're 40 to 50 kilograms of vegetables, cassava, taro, sweet potato, purple yam, 30 to 40 kilograms of fruits, mango, pineapple, cherimoya, and jackfruit, 50 to 80 kilograms of fish, tuna, salmon, marlin, and dorado, 40 to 80 kilograms of assorted nuts, herbs, and seaweed, and 60 to 80 kilograms of pork, shredded or smoked. Maybe that's shredded and smoked. These provisions, based on the staple foods of a Pacific Native society, have a 78 to 83% chance of being accepted by 4338. Should a deposit be rejected, the appointed leader, and that's in quotes, should proceed to an isolated location to avoid destruction of Foundation property and additional loss of life. That's ominous. For more details, see 4338 DN event overview below. That is a collapsible further down the page. And that's the end of the procedures. So we have a little bit of we can kind of make some assumptions as to what's going on. We've got a volcano god or something along those lines that we're giving, typical island offerings to, and it will normally accept them, but sometimes it doesn't. And if it doesn't, the leader should go find somewhere out of the way to face their punishment. So 4338 is described as a sapient, levitating 2.3 cubic kilometer sphere, and that number is important. We're going to come back to it. So 2.3 cubic kilometer sphere of volcanic rock inhabiting the magma chamber beneath Moaha Island. We have, it's got multiple names. God of the Burning Ocean is the only one I can pronounce, so we're going to talk about that one. It is a central figure in the creation myths and extinction events of some 19 early oceanic cultures. So everything else in this first offset page is done in collapsibles. The DN event interview, which is what happens if there's a rejected offering. The skip is aware of group hierarchy. You can't fool it with D-class or decoy leaders. While it will emerge from the magma conduit, the sphere will, and travel towards the leader of the closest human social group. It will create tendrils of molten rock and metal ore. It uses these to demolish obstacles encountered in pursuit, and it will not stop until either 3 to 5 live healthy people are dropped into the volcanic crater or the leader is dead. And it's either or, but the 3 to 5 live healthy people being dropped into the crater is forbidden by order of the ethics committee. So better one than many. I can generally back that. It does kind of go against how we have used potentially D-class in the past, but I'm okay with it. That doesn't, D-class in their usage, particularly in an area like this, is a little more up in the air than the stuff that was being discussed previously in the last work. It says the cause of death is inconsequential, but it typically happens on account of those molten tendrils. It will drop, it'll absorb the corpse into its core body and then withdraw. Within 20 minutes, a mote of lava will fall from this sphere containing a duplicate of deceased. It looks the same, but is made of animated superheated minerals, and any previous proxy that existed before it will collapse into shards of volcanic glass. These entities act as a consciousness vessel and communication vehicle for the skip. They will only converse with the next leader once they have formally declared themselves as such. And there's a footnote here that says revision required. See 4338-DN-41, presumably the 41st event that we've recorded. That's the next collapsible. And it indicates that for the first time in its 73 years of containment, so you can also do a little bit of math here and decide that this happens about every, 22 months or so, 21, 20. So for the first time in 73 years, 4338 emerged halfway through the lunar month. The current leader, Dr. Morgan Rowell, was already on the island collecting soil samples. At this time, including Director Rowell, 3 Foundation personnel were lost during this event, and a proxy emerged only 14 minutes later. In another unprecedented act, the skip was the one to open communications, demanding to speak to a new leader without delay. We have a head researcher, Thornborough, that volunteered. We have an image to the right of this, and you can hover over it and get a little bit larger image. And it looks to be a volcanic eruption. There's some lightning mixed in with it. And the caption says, "This is Event 41, still taken from the body cam of Security Officer Masters, deceased." So a little bit of flavor. Doesn't really move the story around too much, but does give you that sort of visceral, like, heat of the moment thing, because the cam's a little blurry. You know, the shot has got, it's all fuzzy around the, any hard lines are blurred so as to evoke some movement. So we have an interview log below. And I'm noticing this says 4228 in the hide section of the collapsible, where that should be 4338. We have our interviewee of the skip and our interviewer of acting director Amelia Thornborough. So Thornborough wants answers. She says, "Tell me why you attacked us." And 4338 replies, "Such impudence. Will you not grovel or beg my mercy? What compels you to anger your own god?" And she replies, "You're wearing my dead friend's face. I don't appreciate it." And it replies, "Learn to appreciate, child, or perhaps I will travel to the great shore, bringing fire and rock to your SCP. How many lives are worth your pride, Amelia?" And she asks again, "Why did you attack us? We've done exactly as you," and gets cut off. "You insult me. Morgan insulted me. I ask for the peak of the harvest, and now I learned you give me its mealy ends." And she says, "I don't understand. All the food we've provided has been of the highest quality." So at this point, the sort of vessel for the skip, since this does look like a human, is this sort of emissary, but it is their consciousness, bites down through their lower lip, and molten liquid escapes from this wound, and it smears this substance across the table with a fingertip, creating a single looping cursive word, and says, "I want this." Versus, what is that? Cadbury? Who? And gets cut off again. Says, "I only speak your words. I do not bother with your symbols. If this means Cadbury, then yes, I want Cadbury. I want the sweet melting resin." So Thornborough says, "Wait, hang on. Were these symbols on a kind of reflective sheet? Was that wrapped around this Cadbury in small brown squares?" Replies, "Yes. One of your followers offered it unto me. A pitiful sum, but plentiful in flavor. Bring me more of this Cadbury, or bring me the one who can." We have a problem. We've got a volcano god that's been given chocolate, and it likes it. So the second interview log is between Agent Rhodes and Kevin Emerson. Emerson is the interviewee. And Rhodes starts the interview off, says, "You threw chocolate into the volcano." Emerson says, "You can't prove that." I love this line. This ellipsis before it says, "You can't prove that." It's a great way to start the second log off. So it says, "We did a full sweep of every ship, Mr. Emerson. We know you have a whole suitcase full of..." And Emerson says, "Oh, so immediately this is all my fault because I like junk food?" Rhodes says, we're not blaming you for your eating habits, Kevin. We're blaming you for waking up a volcano god. Now, do we have to launch a whole formal inquiry here? Or, and gets cut off. Emerson says, Jesus, fine, I did it. I wasn't trying to breach containment or anything. I was just bored, okay? All I've done since I got here is sift silt. There's another pause where it says, you're a geologist. I love this log. Emerson says, an anomaly geologist. The geology here is non-anomalous. We've known since the friggin' 50s the only abnormal thing on this island is the stupid orb. But no, command keeps putting in work orders with our department, and this month I drew the short straw. And Rhodes says, that still doesn't explain why. Gets cut off. Says, no, just, I'm getting to that, okay? So I was out having my lunch, and, before now, we were totally convinced that only the crater connected to 4338, not every little lava flow, so I wasn't technically breaking protocol by, disposing of my leftovers. And Rhodes says, protocol doesn't just mean... Wait, leftovers? What do you mean leftovers? It wasn't just the chocolate? Emerson says, well, no, there was some other stuff. And folds his hand into his laps, purses his lips, and looks away from Agent Rhodes. Rhodes says, what other stuff? Kevin, what else did you throw into the lava? So we go to a third interview log between Rowell and Thornborough, and it's in medias res. The volcano god says, and the crispy golden triangles, and the bubbling juice black as night. I demand the chewy fluffy sponge stuffed with fruit paste. I demand the spiced salted sticks of dried meat. I demand the sweet colored nectar carved in the shape of tiny animals. I demand... And gets cut off. Yes, well, we're going... All right, I'm getting... God damn it, would somebody just get the commissary on the line? And we have below that the notice, a notice the file you're reviewing is currently outdated as of September 3rd, 2018, update November 8th, and that is a link to the second offset. So this whole first offset is just awesome. We've told a complete story in one offset, which doesn't always happen. And you could leave it there and it would be a really interesting piece on its own, but we don't leave it there. We have an object class of Euclid in the second offset. Another image, overhead shot of a volcano from its little active central chamber, the caldera, and the procedures, new stuff are laid out in blue. So now there are only 3 security cruisers maintaining a 4-point blockade around the island. The offerings are now entirely different. 2,200 to 2,800 kilograms of cookies, Nabisco Oreos, Keebler brand chocolate chip cookies, 1,600 to 2,000 kilograms of potato chips, Pringles, Doritos, Ruffles, 1,300 to 1,600 kilograms of assorted chocolates, candies, and sugary confections, 1,000 to 1,400 kilograms of pastries, donuts, danishes, turnovers, 1,200 to 1,800 kilograms of pork or beef ribs, smoked and marinated, 1,200 to 1,800 kilograms of seasoned chicken wings, 1,000 to 1,200 kilograms of Nestle Hot Pockets, and 1,300 to 1,600 kilograms of frozen pizza. These provisions, based on the skip's ongoing requests, have an unknown chance of being accepted. So that's the next thing is the only other change in here, not counting collapsibles, is that the sphere is now 4.6 cubic kilometers in volume. So previously it was 2.3, I believe. 2.3, and now it's 4.6. So it's quadrupled in size. And we have an interview and event log. And this is between 4338 and official director now, Thornborough. It's noted in the foreword here, and that actually should be F-O-R-E-W-O-R-D, not forward as the more common usage of the word. It says that over the last 8 months, the skip's requests have become progressively more extravagant, and their behavior is more erratic. While speaking, it spits molten elements in all directions, necessitating a high-tensile plexiglass divider, which needs to be routinely replaced. Rocky growths across the epidermis have increased by 230%. They're getting a little heavy. So, it says that the 4338 is getting kind of pissy here. Thornborough says, "Greetings, 04338. Your servant is honored to be called." 4338 says, "That is better. I have new demands." And she goes, "Shocker. And your servant is honored to listen." It says, "You will deliver unto me the ribs of your great dairy beast, twice in number than last you offered." And gets cut off. "And more of the sour baubles covered in sweet dust." Your servant gets cut off again. "And the yellow sponges filled with cream, more of those." Your servant, I will go, gets cut off again. "And 5-fold the delicate Cadbury, swirling and stuffed with amber." Thornborough says, "Wait, no, we discussed this. Those were imported chocolates from very far away. Remember, we agreed a lower quantity of higher quality food could ease the strain of our current shipping," and gets cut off. "Enough, your strain does not concern me. You will do as I command, or you and your SCP will burn." Thornborough says, "Look, you can't spring this on us 3 days before." It says, Can't. You would dare tell me what I can or cannot do? Your defiance wearies me, Amelia. I will suffer it no longer." And an earthquake was recorded on Mawaha Island, 4.0 in magnitude. All personnel were evacuated, moving away at high speed. As per protocol, Director Thornborough remained on site. That's a nice touch. But it did not emerge after 45 minutes. Quakes became periodic rather than steady, occurring in small, violent jolts. Drone craft were dispatched to take low-pass video, revealing 4338 repeatedly failing to exit the crater lip. Unlike 6 months prior, it now lacked the appropriate speed and dimensions. Security cruiser Kingfisher returned to the island shortly after, allowing Director Thornborough to continue the interview. Thornborough says, 4338, your servant would ask why you didn't execute your threat. 4338 thinks about it, says, "You amuse me." Pardon? "You amuse me, Amelia. By my mercy, your life may dwindle on, but never question me again, or you shall know only torment and death." And Thornborough says, "Well then, your servant is honored. Shall we continue?" 4338 says, "Yes, I demand the Cadbury," and this time he gets cut off. Says, "Actually, I was thinking now would be a good time to discuss a full overhaul of our current arrangement." Says, "What?" "A good 30% total reduction, along with the substitution of," and gets cut off by 4338. "Filth, do you yearn for death so desperately?" Gets cut off. "Reduce personnel and security, given only one person really needs." It says, enough. Another earthquake was detected, now only 2.8 in magnitude. Security personnel moved to evacuate, but Thornborough signaled them to stop. The skip again failed to exit the crater. Versus previous events, only 5% of the molten rock was expelled. So, during this event, Rawl was shouting, spitting, wrenching against their restraints. This behavior lasted for 8 minutes until it became fatigued and slumped over onto the floor. Thornborough says, "Is that all?" And he goes, "Wretch, you would evoke my anger yet and gets cut off. Says, "Your servant has no wish to anger you, 4338. If you are displeased, then I and my people shall leave." And 4338 says, "No," and bolts upright, trying to pull themselves up by the table's edge, but only stumbles forward. Says, "No, you cannot. I demand you. I demand," and slowly lowers himself back down to the floor. Thornborough says, "Are you ready to continue, 4338? There's 8 seconds of silence. Yes. Good. Now about this overhaul. And we go to another offset. This is... the old one was outdated as of August 19th, 2018. This is new procedures as of July 1st, 2019. Yeah, that was just a couple days ago. This is now object class safe. 4338 has another image taken from a wide shot further out in the ocean. Image taken from shipping vessel during monthly offload, July 1st, 2019. And the new procedures in blue: aquatic research vessel Heron will remain anchored off of Mawaha Island. Once per calendar month, the following items must be deposited into its crater: 1,500 kilograms of cookies, low-cost bulk; 1,200 kilograms potato chips, low-cost bulk; 1,000 kilograms chocolate, low-cost bulk; 1,400 kilograms of pork, any variety; 1,000 kilograms chicken, any variety; 1,300 kilograms of beef, any variety. The sphere is now 7.3 kilometers cubed in volume. It is now contained within the magma chamber beneath Moaha Island. It will absorb any edible matter that comes into contact with the lava on Moaha Island. An ongoing regimen of calorie-dense food has proven effective in neutralizing its mobility and aggressive tendencies. Prior to these containment protocols, it was capable of both exiting the volcano and producing animated artificial duplicates of human corpses that share its consciousness. The last of these proxies, former director Morgan Rowell, is contained aboard ARV Heron. Use of 4338 for the disposal of slaughterhouse trimmings, industrial runoff, and all other edible waste products is currently under consideration. We have an interview log. It's, again, between Rowell and Thornborough. And it says, Thornborough says, "Hello, 4338. How are you today? Any issues with our current offerings?" It shrugs. "Very well. I will check in again next month." Then moves to leave when 4338 is heard speaking, nearly inaudibly. "What have you done to me?" Thornborough says, "Huh? I'm sorry, did you say something?" And there's another pause, and 4338 says, "You poisoned me." Says, "No, I assure you, everything we've offered you, everything you've personally requested, has been safe to eat." Says, "A devious poison, then. You could not kill my body, so you killed my ambition. I should have destroyed you all the moment you arrived." Thornborough says, "Yeah, well, hindsight and all that. Are we done here?" She has the upper hand fully and is fully aware of it at this point. So 4338's head falls to one side. A chunk of their ear, now entirely volcanic rock, falls apart. And it says, "You no longer fear me, do you? Do you even consider me a god? Did you ever?" There's no response. And he continues, "Long ago, I was met by great wooden barges flying sheets of white. The men aboard wore fine silks and plates of metal. I attacked them before they even touched my shore. Who were they to fashion iron? Only I deserved such power. But they fled, so I knew they still feared me at least. But then, so soon after, you or your SCP arrived. Now even your ships are made of metal. You know so many secrets of earth and sky, yet you still made offerings. I thought you still worshipped me, feared me. Should have known then. Should have killed you." Continues mumbling, lower than the recorder can pick up. Thornborough says, "Well, if you have any more requests, don't hesitate to ask us, 4338, and moves to the door. 4338 says, perhaps more of the sweet wafers." Thornborough looks back over her shoulder. Just before resealing the containment chamber, she makes a short, sweeping bow. Says, "Your servant." End article. I love the hell out of this piece. It's everything I want out of a modern work. All of the whole first offset works as its own story, but we have a good transitory piece in the second, and the third we tell an entirely different story where you actually feel some sympathy for this chubby volcano god. It is really, really wonderful. I outside of the I think I pointed out a couple of very minor issues with the piece with spelling and so on. From a narrative perspective, from how the story's been architected, I wouldn't change a thing. I love this work. This was a very, very easy and very very strong +1. Moving on, the first of a couple of shorter works that I'm going to talk about today, SCP-4176, titled Taxes by Uncle Nicolini. We have an image that is honestly too small and too detailed to really make out what's going on. It looks like I can see a barrel and some other containers. They're all full of things. I can tell that much, but I can't see enough detail to tell you what any of it actually is. But it looks like there's different containers in a room all holding stuff. What the stuff is, I'm not quite sure. We can make some inferences later in the as we go through the piece, but I couldn't tell what this was right away. We have an object class of Keter and short procedures. The skip events are to be prefaced to the civilian population as arms tests. Foundation agents planted in Adna are to administer amnestics upon a 4176 event. Objects found produced from 4176 events are to be used as Foundation assets. That's interesting. It is described then as a yearly reoccurring phenomenon affecting the Adna post office in Adna, Washington, typically occurring within the last week of January. These events begin with the sudden launching of an unmarked customized intercontinental ballistic missile in the Pacific Ocean, and we have a footnote explaining that the location of these launches is not consistent and has changed every event. Upon launch, the missile will be directed towards the unincorporated territory of Adna, Washington, and land in the field in front of the area's post office. But no civilians have been harmed as a result of one of these events. So, for whatever reason, I'm thinking like ICBM. I think nukes. Like there's a nuke launched that lands in a field in front of a post office in presumably a little shit town in Washington State, and all missiles involved in these events feature secured hatches with the phrases taxes for fiscal year, presumably the previous year, and to Internal Revenue Service, Washington, USA, spray painted across the surface. So the contents within the hatch are typically objects possessing large monetary value, such as precious jewels, paintings, and other similar items. So we can look back at the picture now, and you can assume that maybe these things are full of gold and jewels. There's an urn at the bottom center that might be like spilling out gold coins. Still not really clear what we're seeing, and it also doesn't really mesh with what we've listed in the logs of objects recovered from such events. In 2010, the object log was a deed to a downtown Manhattan private parking garage, 50 kilograms of 16th century gold coins, 15 sable fur coats, and 75% of a well-preserved mammoth carcass. The next year, The Scream by Edward Munch, verified to not be a replica, and 5 wrapped Publix submarine BLT sandwiches. They're pretty good. It's interesting that we were that close just with The Scream, and we were 5 Publix sandwiches away from being even. The following year, 75 kilograms of radiant cut rubies, a 1952 Topps Mickey Mantle baseball card, and this one was probably chosen specifically because last year a PSA 9 version of that card sold for almost $3 million. Additionally, there's a 1968 Fender Strat autographed by Jimi Hendrix, and 5 boxes of Gurkha Black Dragon cigars. The following year, Landscapes with Cottages by Rembrandt, 693 liters of Y909, that's a link to SCP-3000, and 3 mint condition first edition copies of Magic the Gathering card Black Lotus. Those have become more valuable lately as well. They're all kind of going up in value, I suppose. In 2014, a padded case containing 20 humanoid figurines, accompanied by a certificate of authenticity signed by Dr. Wondertainment, 25% of a moderately preserved mammoth carcass, and 1 framed image of a guinea pig chewing on a carrot. In 2015, a single capsule of SCP-500. I really liked that, and I suggested to Nicolini that he go and reach out to Snorlison and see if he could get him to backlink this work in to adjust the count of the current number of pills. I thought that would be a really cool touch. In 2016, a golden Buddha statue, 1 wooden chalice, 1 portrait of John D. Rockefeller, the Voyager 1 space probe, I'm not sure how that fit in there, but additionally, 18 goats, the Coca-Cola recipe, and 1 ornate gold key, lock unknown. Doing pretty well for these to be tax returns. And we have an addendum. Says 4176 did not occur as expected in 2017. We continued observing it throughout February and March. Instead, the event occurred in April of that year. It had the deed to Tojo Una Una Island and 800 stocks for Amazon.com Inc. Of note, the message written on the missile used for this event differed from the norm, reading, Hello, yes, please accept his payment for the tax of 2017 fiscal year. Thank you. Sorry for his late. Dado go to vacation with hamster. End article. So, um, I initially led this thing in. I deleted it, leading this in as a pair of dado skips. So, this was just a Nico called this a shit post in SCP form, just to give some context here, and it's a hard summarization to argue with. It's it's kind of stupid. It's funny. It doesn't it's not. Now, the object class of Keter is interesting. It's like we haven't explained, like we haven't contained it, but it's not. It's a weird classification. It doesn't meet my usual sort of standards for a Keter. Euclid I would totally get because we're maybe, yeah, I guess probably just because it is uncontained and we're not we're having zero luck in containing it. We have procedures that are handling the mitigation of it, but not the actual containment. So what, on second thought, I'm fine with it. It's just a goofy little thing. I do like the single capsule of SCP-500, given that all the stuff before this was super highly valuable. Presumably, you stick these together, most of these were worth tens of millions of dollars in revenue, and then the single capsule of SCP-500, and like I said, I think getting a backlink from 500, one of the more famous Series 1 pieces, would be really, really cool. I think it would do awesome for this work. But that's fantasy writing. In the without that, all that said, I like this. It's fine. What can you say? We're not there's not a lot of deep nuance going on to this piece. But it's fun, and just on that basis does everything right for the format that we're used to seeing out of a dado skip. Sure, +1. And I'll be damned, we've got another dado skip. SCP-4257, Public Transit by Dado, by Nameless Mediocre. This was a last-second inclusion into the week 27 show. I had the two dado skips. I didn't want to put in one over the other. I'm like, you know what? They're both pretty short. There's not a ton of analysis needed. Let's just talk about them both. So that's what I did, and we've got a wide image of a beat-up old red car. I don't know. This isn't an American make. I don't think. I don't recognize it. It's like a chunky station wagon-y version of a Geo Metro. Like it's a four-door with a little, in a wagon style. Not super familiar with this one. Anyway, the caption is more interesting because it's a picture of a car, and the caption says, "This is D8991, 4 hours after ingestion of SCP-4257. So the procedures are a single paragraph, indicating that 9 of the 15 known instances of 4257 are kept in a secure container at Site 81. The 6 instances not in containment are currently in low Earth orbit with an expected reentry date of 2041-1010, so far future. Testing of 4257 on human subjects requires approval from the Ethics Committee and the Department of Orbital Objects Tracking, DOOT, which I was present in the chat as I got that. They basically created an entire department just for the acronym. The description indicates that it is the group designation for 15 pills created by parapharmacologist and person of interest Dado. The pills are bottled in a standard orange prescription container with the words "Space Drive" by Dado written on the surface in black marker. Once ingested, it will transform the subject into an automobile designated -1 over the course of an hour, the make and model of which is that typically used with their cultural background and age group. -1 will lack components or possess mechanical complications analogous to their human physical disabilities, but these don't appear to affect its primary anomalous properties. -1 entities retain their memories and personality after transformation and can perform rudimentary communication via the manipulation of their components. And I was actually, I felt this was kind of a missed opportunity because we don't go into that part at all. So Dash 1 instances are capable of moving in only two directions, the direct opposite of Earth's gravity and forward. Instances can achieve high velocity with low amounts of fuel and do not require contact with the surface to move. So that is it onto addenda. Discovery log. It was discovered in 2020, January 22nd, following a report of NORAD detecting an anomalous flight path entering low Earth orbit. Satellite imaging identified it as a 2001 Chevy Malibu with a missing headlight and rust covering about 80% of its frame. 6 instances of 4257, the pills, were recorded floating in the automotive cabin. Tracking of its flight trajectory led Foundation agents to the abandoned home of a Dave Gillespie, where the remaining 9 pills were recovered. And we go to Addendum 2, recovered message logs. These were IM excerpts recovered from the personal computer of Dave Gillespie. And it says, "Hello, is this Dado? Ben said you could help me." "Yes, this is Dado. What you need?" He says, "I'm not doing well. The doctors have given up on treating my cancer." He says, "You want cancers gone?" He says, "I wish. No, I just want help finishing my bucket list. I was told you can accomplish some far-out things." He says, "Yes, people trust Dado for fine Dado product." He says, "Okay, can you get me into space? If I'm going to die, I want to die in space." He says, "Space? How much space do you need? Like entire Dado warehouse?" And that's a link to 4525. He says, "No, like outer space, the final frontier." He says, "Like Elon Man?" He says, "Yes, like Elon Musk. Can you do that?" He says, "Yes, Dado is fine business owner like Elon Man and the Bezos. Can do space drive too." He says, "Great. How long will it take? I don't have a lot of time left." He says, 2 days. Dado have Amazon Prime." He says, "Wow, you are fast. How much do I owe you?" He says, "No charge. Dado do this for everyone who want take space drive, like Elon Man and the Bezos." He says, "Thank you." So we have a second transcript here. It says, "Hey, I got some pills with your name on them in the mail today. I thought you were going to send me to space." He says, "Yes, Dado send you pills for space drive." He says, "How are pills going to get me to space? This isn't some Heaven's Gate kind of bullshit, is it?" He says, "Trust Dado. Pills work. Dado test on hamster. Now it drive on ceiling." He says, "I just took one and don't feel very good. Like, this is worse than the chemo." And Dado says, "Is working. Go outside." And he says, "Why? Will the fresh air help?" He replies, "Dado not liable for damage to home." End article. Both of these 2 pieces really picked the right place to end the works, because you can make all the assumptions from there on what happened, and I think you'd be right. I really liked both of them. This one is the first. You know what? Let's talk about both of them, because one thing that I neglected to point out in the previous one in 4176 is the comparative absurdity here, that Dado is so, like, I don't know if it's just naive or what it is about his character, but to try to file his taxes, he's sending a payload full of valuable shit, not to Washington, D.C., but Washington State, and Adna, which is probably the first post office on the list, because it's probably like the number 1 post office in Washington. So why it ends up there, well, he's not one for details, really. And on this second one, we've got similar sort of things. Like he's getting the spirit, I guess, of what we want. You want to drive like Elon Musk, and if you missed that whole Starman event where SpaceX launched a car into space, you had the whole video of a little dude in an astronaut suit sitting in a Tesla in space. It was a cool visual, and so Dado will, make you like that, but rather than being like the spaceman, he's gonna make you into the fucking car, and it's and the car's messed up like you are because, well, you're turning into the car, and you're presumably messed up to be asking for this. I like the thought of, I'm saying, Dado not liable for damage to home. Goes outside like, oh god, am I gonna fly? And he starts transforming into a fucking car. Like, this is not what I wanted. But it's like but he can now only go into space and forward. I really dig it. These are both, they're fun. There is a little bit of nuance in as much as they have to be. I think there was a collective push to want to establish more firmly the sort of person that Dado is as a person of interest. And I think both of them were trying to get a particular sort of whimsical sort of thing out there. I think they both did that. These are both really good pieces. 4257 doesn't have the upvotes yet of 4176. It is right now the newest piece on the wiki, but is currently not doing too bad. It is at plus 15 at the time of this recording, and it is... it's fun. We pretty much talked about the whole thing on both of them, but these were a pair of really fun pieces. Now, last but not least, SCP-4587, titled A Dog's Purpose by Dave You Fool. We have an image, and we're going to talk about it, because it's quite an image. It looks to be set up like a movie poster, or perhaps front cover art, and the caption indicates it is the cover sleeve for SCP-4587. It says Dog Movie. It's all one word, but it's sort of broken out into two lines. So the first line's DOGM, the second line is OVIE. And the subtitle is Sometimes Life Has Dogs in It. The problem is, two of these words are misspelled. Sometimes has the M and the E switched around, and dogs is spelt dogogs. We have Charles Grodin, Andy McDowell, and Alan Rickman, but that's Al ampersand Rickman with no A. And at the top, we have Totley Soft Home Video. Video is also misspelled in quotes. It says, because computers, exclamation point. And we have a little sticker, and it says featuring, and that's a very phonetic way to spell featuring. Totley Soft never-ending video technologies. There's a lot of effort put into this. I really appreciate the sort of using the image to evoke some humor and some absurdity into it early, because it holds true throughout the piece. We have an object class of safe and procedures that indicate that it is kept in a long-term containment locker at Site 59, and as of 5/20/19, testing of 4587 has been indefinitely suspended. For further study, non-anomalous recordings of all -A iterations are available at Site 59's archival wing. So, the skip is initially described as a VHS video cassette acquired during an inspection of the SCP-2803 compound. That is a cross-link, and one thing that I really respect with Dave You Fool is all of the cross-links go to their own works. They have been slowly but steadily building a very detailed little universe, and we're in just a bit of it. And the thing that I really respect is that you don't have to do the back reading for this to still be an interesting, compelling piece, and they're pretty much all that way. So this is apparently, we have the footnote indicates that no other known instances has been recovered. It's currently believed this project was abandoned by Totley Soft to focus on video games, and that was the gist of 2803. So this was a one-off of a home video from Totley Soft, and you don't really have to know them to enjoy the work. The content of the skip is permanently altered after each complete viewing. Remember, the little sticker said never-ending video technologies. The initial content is a PG-rated comedy drama film titled Dogma Ovi, starring Charles Grodin, Andy McDowell, and Alan Rickman. When reached for comment, all actors involved were unable to recall any involvement with this film or Totley Soft. The film was created in 1989 as a means to demonstrate the company's capability for never-ending video technologies. In other words, an anomalously self-expanding shared fictional universe. And other than the established actors named in the credits, all other roles have been credited to P. Hudson Gock, the name the CEO of Totlaysoft uses to identify itself. It is not a person, and if you want more info, I strongly suggest reading 2803. Through each new film, a few elements remain the same. Each iteration is a direct sequel to the previous. The dialogue is filled with the broken English typical of Totlaysoft. All other professional values are typical high quality for a major motion picture from 1989. Charles Grodin portrays the protagonist, try that one 5 times fast, a suburban businessman in his late 30s named Ryan Frompt. Annie McDowell plays his wife, Marianne Frompt. The Frompts have children, though the numbers, names, and identities of these children have little to no narrative consistency from iteration to iteration. The antagonist is played by Alan Rickman with an entirely different character each time. Ryan struggles with a flaw in his character, stated outright in the first 5 minutes of the film by Marianne, immediately preceded by the phrase, "So I saying now outright to your face, you husband." So they have that in common on all the movies. And to remedy this flaw, Marianne adopts one or more dogs despite Ryan's objections. The relationship between Ryan, the dogs, and his family lead to a deeper bond between all parties involved, but puts a strain on Ryan's relationship with Alan Rickman's character and causes him to reevaluate his life and the aforementioned flaw. Then the dog dies in a tragic accident/incident, which causes Ryan to have an epiphany. He cuts off ties with the antagonist. The Frompts plant a tree in their backyard over where the dog was buried, and Ryan closes the film with a voiceover, ending with the phrase, "I am become greater guy than was." I do like Totlaysoft as a thing. So we have an experiment log, and this is a highly truncated one because we have the instances are 1, 5, 27, 117, 210, and 528. So I'm just going to do a high level, just go through them quick here. So in the initial movie, just titled Dog Movie, the flaw is, "You are not liking dogs, so change your opinion right now." Alan Rickman's character is Mr. Flappeter, Ryan's vehemently dog-phobic boss. The dog is Wiggly, a Weimaraner, who dies drowning after saving Ryan's son from a river. And the flaw is resolved by Ryan quitting his job and devoting more time to his family and their love of dogs. The 5th iteration is Dog Movie 5, Paging Dr. Dogm. The flaw says, "You am run away from the sadness." Alan Rickman's character is Dr. Pung, Ryan's psychiatrist. They have 4 dogs, Jimbo, Jambo, Rambo, and Flint, all Yorkshire Terriers. The dogs die by being poisoned from eating Ryan's antidepressants. It's resolved by, after learning how to embrace comfortable feelings, Ryan triumphantly claims that he doesn't need Dr. Pung's medications to be happy and fires him. As he walks away, Dr. Pung slips on a puddle of Ryan's tears and dies from the resulting head injury. In the epilogue, Ryan begins to realize that suffering has power beyond human understanding. So there's like this mixture of like interesting, like actual compelling story, but these also moments of pure absurdity. And I lied, by the way. I'm talking about each of these fucking movies. They're great. The 27th iteration, the title is Dog Movie 27, 710 Split. The flaw is, "You needing step up bowling game." So Alan Rickman plays Chet Warpledang, the Frompt family bowling team's rival. The dog is Lassaroony, a collie, who is beaten to death with a bowling ball by Chet in an attempt to demoralize the Frompt family. The flaw is resolved by, after locking himself in his bedroom for a week-long depressive state, Ryan emerges with significantly increased muscle mass. In a montage, he scores 700 consecutive perfect games at different bowling alleys across the country. In shame, Chet commits suicide by choking on a bowling pin. Ryan expresses suspicion at his newfound ability to score less than 300 points, but his wife reminds him, "In losing dogs of that you are love dogs, your greatness begins itself." So, Dog Movie 117, Farm of Dogs, has the flaw, "In future, you will die on someday." Alan Rickman plays Agent Marglestein of the FBI, investigating malignant paranormal activity in the neighborhood. They have 500 labradoodles. Each one is named Sacrificey. And during a cookout, Sacrificee number 8 approaches Ryan. It's gained the ability to speak, and he says, "Time is have come, master, as it must," and spontaneously burst into flames along with all 500 other dogs, or all 499, I suppose. This causes a conflagration across the entire neighborhood, after which only the Frompt residence remains. It's resolved by Ryan's tears of grief covering his body in a thin film of liquid, which slowly changes the color of his skin from white to a shining gold. A forest of 500 oak trees shoot from the soil of what used to be his backyard. Because they're supposed to bury the dog, but there's 500 of them, So, Agent Marglestein shoots Ryan to no effect. The agent chokes to death on a whirlwind of the dog's ashes, and Ryan boasts that "you know not a thing." Tragedy upon tragedy upon tragedy has sculpted the skin clay of my soul into the plaster of a perfect harmony. Scar tissue toughens until indestructible is being skin. Some day the flagellation of the self forces me to become greatest guy than all. Until then, I am become greater guy than was. So, Dog Movie 210 is Dog Movie Transcendence. And flaws. There are some who do not appreciate the you am being great. Alan Rickman plays the Abrahamic God. There are 72,500,000 border collies, collectively named the Collective. Dog's cause of death is redacted. The Flaw's resolution says after swallowing the antagonist whole, Ryan gathers his legions of slaves and has a throne built from the mummified bodies of the Collective. The ghost of Wiggly, the Weimaraner from the first film, unifies with Ryan's soul. As a result, Ryan's form becomes an amorphous, vaguely Charles Grodin-like deity made of memorial trees, which then sobs in grief to complete Ryan's assumption of godhead. In the Dog Movie 528, it's just titled Road Trip. The flaw is that there are not a single dogs left on Earth. All of in afterlife, so we must going there. Everything after this is expunged, and we have a level 5 clearance required collapsible from Liesl Naismith at the SCP Foundation. This is a recurring character in Dave U. Fool's works. And she says, I was just on the phone with the late Dr. Loretta Weiss via her SCP-2922-A. That's another backlink to another Dave U. Fool skip, which is a way of communicating with dead folks. And I believe, and they may have to correct me if I'm wrong, I think this was the first time we laid out the Three Moons universe. So she's been our main contact in Korbennik for the last year, currently stationed on one of the Three Moons Initiative settlements, some resort province called Bifrost, which has the highest concentration of deceased pets and their owners. So yesterday, on May 19th, a hostile reality bender attacked Bifrost, and the initiative president turned into Alan Rickman for half an hour. Her account coincides with the time and content of the movie. Death is impossible in this world, and that's explained in 2922. There were casualties, psychological trauma, lots of money and property damage, and no mouth must screamers, which we don't elaborate on at all, and I love that. Niang just traced it back to us. I don't want to sound any alarms just yet, but we may have an impending K-class extra-dimensional diplomatic breakdown scenario. So I'm going to pause for a moment here. Don't do this to me, Dave, you fool. that character was never once uttered. This is I think a Nordic rune. This is Thorn, the glyph Thorn, and it's pronounced th. Like what's wrong with the alphabet? Honestly, I guess the absurdity here would be that there are so many different K-class scenarios that we have to reach past, the typical alphabet, and past the Greek alphabet, and we're getting, into other sets of glyphs like these Nordic runes. Anyway, she says, I've put a moratorium on further testing with the tape. If there's a silver lining here, it's that the entity that attacked Bifrost only exists so long as the tape is playing, but the damage has been done, and sorry I had no idea is only going to get us so far. Please advise. End article. So, this work does reference this sort of shared universe that Dave U. Fool's built across the different works. I love seeing more Three Moons Initiative stuff, and this is, it starts out funny, it stays absurd the whole way through, and then it just punches you at the end with, oh, something was actually happening this whole time. We've played through this thing 528 times before now, and we may have been causing actual issues somewhere. There's also the possibility that this stuff is happening in some weird future where by playing through all of these different iterations of the movie, the Foundation has killed all of the dogs on Earth. And boy, I couldn't take that. So the ending of the piece with this, there were actual real ramifications of the work, I think is a good ending. Given how many times we played through this thing, was a little absurd in that, what else are we going to get out of this piece? We've, probably by the 27th time you've done this, you've got sufficient data points to be like, okay, well, this is weird, and can probably just leave it there, but we didn't, and we may have caused some consequences. So I like that. I like this piece all in all. This was a very easy +1 for, just being another quality addition to this sort of shared universe that Dave Ufull's been working on for quite some time now. And we are just about out of here, but I have one mailbag question from AIS Mallard asking, there's Bright's challenge. Are there other continuous wiki challenges or writing restrictions you want to see more articles for? Honestly, it's kind of a cop-out answer, but not really. I think the challenges are, maybe interesting for a certain set of people. They don't honestly do a ton for me. I don't see the relative value in it versus making every piece, trying to make it the best that you can make it. So, yeah, not really. I've talked in the past about different contest-based things. That's not really what we're talking about here. So, my challenge, if you want to challenge, just, try and make the next thing that people are going to talk about for years, that thing that people go back and reference, time and time again, weeks, months, years down the road. That's the sort of thing that I think is more interesting and more valuable to you as an author, as a feather in your hat, than beating one of these challenges, because really outside of that forum, nobody really knows that you ever did it, and that's a very small audience compared to the broader SCP community. The deep dive show for SCP 4406 and UIU file 2017-102 will be going live this coming Tuesday, and we'll have a CollabCon recap soon. I don't know exactly when, but we'll be doing it soon. When we've got votes, tabulated, or at least close enough that I can get it narrowed down to what's going to be on the part 1 and what's going to be on the part 2 of the show. So that said, week 28, about this time next week, July 12th. And if you thought this show was worth $1 at patreon.com/SCP Cafe, anything really is appreciated. So until next time around, keep reading, keep writing, and I'll see you on the other side.